Okay, welcome to Blockchain Beast. Blockchain technology will allow citizens throughout the world to create and codify their own body of law and subject themselves and others to that law. This is already happening at a shallow and isolated level. If you are a citizen in a country, you usurp the throne of God so that you can act as God. And blockchain technology will further solidify this and allow everybody to voluntarily do this rather than kind of be coerced to it like we are in our societies now. You will act and appear to be someone you are not. If you are a citizen of a country, you act and appear to be someone you are not. You are an actor and you love your role. You do not necessarily even understand that you are playing a role. We're going to answer all these questions. We're going to make all this very clear in this presentation. You are a slave to the God that you created, which is you. And most importantly, you cannot serve two masters. So the first part of this presentation, part one, there's going to be part one and part two. In part one, we're going to dive into how already we have subjected ourselves under law that we have created. We're going to talk about this in the perspective of a democratic government, and then we're going to relate this in part two about how blockchain will spread this ideology throughout the entire world. And we're even going to talk about, so we're going to talk about how there's parallels from our current governmental model to the blockchain model, and then we're even going to talk about spiritual parallels to blockchain and how this all relates and how it's all being used to deceive you, trick you into forfeiting your rights as a flesh and blood man in exchange for privileges afforded by the state or the population as a whole. If we create a society in which we kick God out of the seat of authority and all what is left is just us people, just people who are all created equally, and nobody has more authority than anybody else, we must give somebody authority. We must consent to giving them that authority, and we must create an authority that is greater than ourselves and subject ourselves underneath that authority. And that authority is something that we are creating, and we are all being a part of this creation. And democracy is kind of a beta version of what the blockchain governance and the world that blockchain is going to create with all of the technology that is going to be built on top of it. A fully realized counterfeit kingdom will be manifested using technology that is not created by God, and the authority of it will be the creator of this technology, which in short is us, the people. We are going to look at governance and democracy in a way that you probably have never thought of before. And we're going to talk about terms that you've never properly been told the true meaning. And we're simply going to reveal the truth by defining words, connecting dots, exposing the lies, leaving nothing but the truth. All right, so first, where does law come from? A creator is in control of its creation. If he creates something, you have authority over it. If you have a house, you are king of the castle. No one can come into your house and tell you how to conduct your household. You created or bought the house, therefore you make the rules. It's your house, your creation. You create the rules. If you have a child, you are the authority of that child. You make the rules. You make the law. You and your husband or wife created the child, therefore you have authority over the child. You can raise the child however you want. I raise my child how I want. You raise your child how you want. I make the rules. As long as you're not hurting anybody, hurting the child. Their bedtime could be 8 o'clock. It could be 9 o'clock. You could feed them dessert. You could not. You make the rules. You created the child. You are the creator and you create the rules. So God, he created man. Okay, we are a creation. Therefore, God is the authority over man. No one has more authority over a creation than its creator. No one has more authority over man than God. He created us. He makes the rules. That's just how it is. He created us. He gave us life. We took life. We have life. Therefore, we are under the authority of God and his rules. So God created man and has authority over man. And God's law is God's word. So his law is found in his word. It's also written on our hearts. That's what our conscience is, and that's why we feel guilty when we break this law. Okay, so if you lie or steal, you feel guilty. Of course, you could lie and not feel guilty, and your heart is hardened to that sin, that transgression that you've committed, because it's no longer that big of a deal and you don't fear God. But look what it says right here, Deuteronomy 4:2. It says, "You shall not add unto the word, and you shall not diminish from it. You shall not add anything to his law, and you shall not remove anything from his law." If you add something, you're creating your own law. If you remove something, again, you're creating your own law, and you're becoming the God. You're becoming the authority that you're subjecting yourself under, not God. It's you. So by changing the laws of God, they are no longer God's laws, but man's law. So if you change the law, how could it be God's law? It's not. It might be similar, but it's not. So this makes man to be as gods, knowing good and evil. You can't decide the law. So if you decide what the law is, it's because you think that you know what's good and you know what's evil, and you're choosing good and removing the evil, whereas God knows what's good and he's removing the evil. So we're making a God of ourselves by thinking that we know good and evil, when in reality, the only good that we know is extended and revealed from God. So Paul says, "I had not known sin, but by the law." So he knew evil, he knew sin by the law, by God's law, by his word. How are we to know good and evil apart from God's law? That's a good question. If there's a different lawgiver, there's a different law. If there's a different law, there's a different lawgiver. If there's a different lawgiver, there is a different law. Okay, so consider the following. A father tells his son, Tommy, to be home at 9 o'clock. Tommy plans to ignore the father and come home from his friend's house much later. The friend's dad tells Tommy he needs to leave by 9 because they have to get up early. Tommy ends up being home at 9 o'clock, just like his father said. Whose law did Tommy obey? His dad's or his own? Okay, so if there's a different lawgiver, it's a different law. Tommy became a law unto himself. He created the law. He did not follow his dad's law. It just happened that it worked out with his friend having to go to bed. He had nothing else to do. He decided on his own that he would come home at 9 because that worked in his best interest. He was not obeying his dad. Different lawgiver, different law. Different law, different lawgiver. The same, either way, he would have showed up at the house at 9 if he obeyed his dad or in this situation. But his intent, the condition of his heart, and who he was obeying was completely different. He was not obeying his father. He was obeying himself. He was doing what he willed, not what his father willed. It just happened to have the same result in this example. So what is a democracy? Really, what is a democracy? It's that form of government in which the sovereign power resides in and is exercised by the whole body of free citizens, as distinguished from a monarchy. Okay? So the sovereign power resides in the people. So democracy is a government in which the sovereign power resides in the people. Democracy, so what is sovereign power? It's the power and the authority to make and enforce the law of the land. To make and enforce the law of the land. So democracy gives the people the power and authority to make and enforce the law of the land. So here in a democracy, we create the law and then we enforce the law. We are the God that creates the law, and we are the God that enforces the law. We create the majority. It's the majority that creates the law. So in a democracy, it is the people who create the law and subject themselves to the law. So here's the natural hierarchy of authority. It goes God, man, government. God being the highest, who has authority over everything because he created everything. Then man, which is a creation of God. Then government, the creation of man. Government derives its authority through consent of man. Government can never have more power than the people who grant that power. Likewise, God has granted us power and dominion in Genesis 1:26. Therefore, man can never have more power than the God who granted us that power. Okay, so God gave everything that we have, our life, everything was given to us by God. So we cannot use something that he gave us to usurp his power and his authority. Likewise, government, everything that they have is given to them by us and through our consent, through our power and through our life. We created government. But here's what happens when we change the law, when we usurp it. It ends up being government at the top, then man, then God. So government now controls man, and man changes God's law. Government has the most authority, right? Whose law do we follow here in America, here in the United States? Well, we follow the government law. You know, if God's law works out, yeah, we'll follow that. But we fear the government. We fear the police. We don't fear God the way we fear the government, right? When you're driving down the road and you're going a little too fast and you see the police officer, you start shaking. You start looking in the back mirror. You get scared. That is who you fear. That's who you revere. Do you get that way about God and breaking his law? Okay, who you fear is who you serve. So government is at the top, and then man, and then God at the bottom. We do not revere God. This is just how it is. But how did this come to be? So how did government gain authority over its creator, the people created by God? It didn't. The government has no authority over God's people, period. That's confusing. We'll get to that. So the government created its own world and its own persons, making it the creator and rightful lawgiver and sovereign. So the government does not have authority over God's people. What it did was it created its own world. It created persons. It made its own creation. And a creator has authority over its creation. So the government only has authority over its creation, which is its own world, and it has persons in it. And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about how we all have become a creation of the government, which is something that we created. And we've lost our status as being a flesh and blood man created by God. So right now we've given the government, through being a part of their system, sovereign and supreme power. Sovereign is a chief ruler with supreme power. Supreme power is the highest authority in a state. In a state. Okay, in a state. Very interesting word there. There are two different bodies of law that we can be under. There's state's law and there's God's law. State's law could be man's law, federal law, government law. It's just the law of the world. It's worldly laws. It's created by man. It's created by man. And then there's God's law, which is essentially natural law created by God. So if you are under God's law, you are a flesh and blood man, woman, or child. A man is a creation of God. God has authority over man. Okay, God created man. God has authority over man. It's as simple as can be. If you are under state, man's law, you are a person. Okay? If you're under state's law, you can't be a man because the state did not create man. They created persons. A person is a creation of the state. The state has authority over persons. Are you a person or are you a man? Who are you? Do you know? So here's God referring to man. Exodus 13:2, both of man and of beast. And he that stealeth a man, and if any man lie with her at all, and if any man die verily, if a man have two wives, man, it's referring to man. This is God's law, and he has authority over man. He does not have authority over persons. God is no respecter of persons, and his law does not apply to persons. It applies to man because God created man. God did not create persons. We're about to find out what a person is. So this is taken from the Arizona Revised Statutes, reckless driving. So this is just one of their statutes. And look who it's referring to. A person who drives a vehicle for the safety of persons, a person convicted, convicted persons, privileges of the person for the period of time. If a person who is convicted, the person is guilty, the person is not eligible until the person is served of the person and shall immediately, privilege of the person, okay? The person. This is the Texas Constitution. And every person for an injury done him, nor shall a person be again put upon trial. Mentally ill persons, not charged with a criminal offense. Okay, persons. It never says man. It never says woman. It says persons. Because the state doesn't have control over persons. Over man. It only has control over persons because it created persons. It did not create man. The state didn't create man, right? It created persons. So it has authority over persons. And that's why they use the word persons. And God uses the word man because he created man. Okay? How did God create man? Well, Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. So are you a living soul? Are you a man created by God? Or are you a person created by the state? How do you identify? What do you identify as, a man or a person? When you see the law of man and it refers to a person, you're like, yep, that's me. Creation of the government. Have you thought about these things? Let's move on. God created man out of dust, therefore God has authority over man. Okay? Creator has authority over the creation. All right, so how was the state's person created? So how's a person defined? This is how the Tennessee, Texas, Utah, all 50 states. I have all 50 of the states. They all define them just like this. So Tennessee, person includes a corporation, firm, company, or association. Texas, person includes corporation, organization, government or governmental subdivision or agency, business, trust, estate, trust. Are you in trust with the government? Who do you trust? The state? Do you trust the state? Partnership. Who are you in partnership with? Association, another legal entity. Utah. Person means an individual, an association, an institution. So when you read the code, the Arizona Revised Statutes, the Texas Government Code, the Utah Code, whatever it is, they use words such as person, and then they define those words within the code. And if they don't, then it's kind of based on interpretation, or you go to a law dictionary and get the definition from there. But here they made it extra clear who they are referring to when they say person. So Texas, remember we read the Texas Constitution? It referred to a persons and all the things that applied to it. Well, who's a person? Are you a person? Are you a corporation? Are you a organization? Are you a government or governmental subdivision, an agency, a business trust? Are you an estate? Are you a trust? Are you a partnership? Or are you a man? Are you a person or are you a man? Because if you're a man, then that Texas Constitution isn't talking to you. It's not applicable. You're not under that law. But if you are a person, that's your law. A person is created by the state legislation, therefore the state has authority over the person. The state created the person. The state has authority over its creation, period. So how was the state's person created? Okay, so we went through how it's defined. A person is a creation of the state and under the authority or the jurisdiction of the state. The foundational documentation of the person is the birth certificate. So there is evidence that you are a person. So who created the birth certificate? Well, yeah, your parents filled out the form, but then they turned it into the government and the state, and they returned a birth certificate. They created it. And that's the person. It's really a trust. And that's why when we look up the word person in the statutes, how they define it, it's trust. It's a trust. It's a trust relationship between you and the state. Okay? And we're not really going to get into how that's all a trust relationship, but it's a trust relationship between you and the state, and it's a corporation, and we're gonna get into that. So the birth certificate is the person. It is all preceding forms of identification are obtained by and through the person. So when you go get a driver's license and further bind this contract that you have and this identity that you have formed as being a person, it's through this birth certificate. It's the foundational document. It is the origins of this person. And this birth certificate is a creation of the state, and it has a lot of legal implications to it. Legal and lawful implications, really. Okay, so this is actually my sister's birth certificate. I took a picture of it, redacted all the info, and because all I want to show you is right here. Right here, this is zoomed in right here, and it says Northern Banknote Company. Well, what's on a banknote? You know, that's corporate stuff. That's commercial stuff, right? It's a commercial instruments are put on bank notes. This is bond paper. This is 100% cotton bond paper. That's where your birth certificate is printed on. Why is it printed on bond paper? Okay, so mine, this isn't my birth certificate, but mine says American Banknote Company, and this is one that I found online, and so this is what this one says, and then American Banknote Company right here is also issuing stock right here. So that's quite peculiar that the same bond paper that stock is printed on, the birth certificate is printed on. I wonder what that means. Let's move on. There are two versions of you in this world. There's you, the flesh and blood man or woman, or you, the legal fiction or person. The flesh and blood man is under the authority of God. It serves God. God is their master. The legal fiction or person is under the authority of the state. God is the state is their master. They serve the state. Okay, you cannot serve two masters. You can't do it. So if you're a person and you're serving the state, what does that say about you being a man? It is quite easy to tell who is who simply by looking at your name. If your name is written in all caps like this, then it is your legal fiction person. If it is written like this, John Henry Doe, just the first letter capitalized, nothing else, it is you, the flesh and blood man. So, if I were to write a letter to you, or you write a letter to me, would you write my name like this or like this? Well, this is how private people would talk to each other. This is a personal relationship. This right here is a commercial relationship. This is, where's my money? This is commercial. This is business right here. And a commercial entity can only do business with another commercial entity. Okay, a commercial entity cannot do business with a person. Or with a man. There's no parity. You have to be on an equal playing field. So the government can't do business with a flesh and blood man. There's no parity. So they have to do it in person, through the person, by and through the person. And it's made very clear just by the way it is written. So go get your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, your mortgage statement, utility bill. Anything in commerce will show your all caps name. Go look at it. Every single thing that is created by the state is all caps. Why is this? Well, capitis diminutio maxima. It means the maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. I think that capitalization word has double meanings. If you think about why we're our birth certificate is on bond paper, well, it's because they're capitalizing us. Okay, that has a dual meaning. So John Doe or Doe John, right? So you lose your status of a man because you take on the status of a commercial entity, a creation of the government. Creation of the government has a lower status than a creation of God. The highest or most comprehensive loss of status is, the highest loss of status. That's as low as you can get. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. So when you become a person, you become under the law. You are bound to the law. You are in bondage to the law. You've subverted yourself and subjected yourself to man's law. And it's very evidential based on you having a driver's license and agreeing to being the person. So when he becomes a slave, so when your name's written like this and you identify as being John Doe, you become a slave. A slave to what? A slave to the law. A slave to the creator, the person that created you, the government, and their law. Okay? So dead, all caps letters. So these are found on graveyard tombstones, vessels in commerce, corporate signage, legal fiction documents, driver's license. So all capital letters, it's not proper English. It's not English. Okay? This is not English. That's not appropriate in the manual of styles. This is something else. This is different. This is dead speak. That's why it's written on gravestones, graveyard tombstones. Okay? It's not proper written language and is also defined as glosses in American Sign Language. So the Chicago Manual of Styles, it's the written language transcription of a sign is called a gloss. Okay? So this is a gloss. It's something that is over and above. It is not it's not regular English. It is referring to something that is dead. It is referring to something that is in commerce. It is referring to a legal fiction. Okay? So the all caps name is debased in commerce and in law. It is referring to a dead entity, a corporation. A dead corporation is a dead body that speaks. So a corporation is a body. In oration, or corpse means body, and oration means speak. So, who gives a voice to this corporation, to this dead body that speaks? Because a birth certificate cannot speak, right? Something that is dead cannot speak. Well, who speaks for it? Well, it's you. You speak for the dead. You give life to the lifeless. So what does that mean? If you're giving all your life to something that's dead, what does that mean? What has happened to you? If you, the flesh and blood man, gives all your life to the person, what is the man alive? Have you taken on the persona of the person? It no longer act as the man, but as the person? Has your real life been killed and replaced with giving life to the dead? Think about that. So think about that in relation to you not being able to serve two masters. Who gives a voice to the corporation? You do. You give up your real life and put on the mask of the corporation, the person. The person comes from the Latin persona, human being, person, personage, a part in a drama, assumed character, a part in a drama. Okay, so if you're in a play, you take on a role. You take on a role, that of the character that you were assigned, right? So Romeo and Juliet, you're Romeo, and you are acting, you're putting on that persona, you're putting on the person, you're putting on the mask. You are not actually Romeo, you are just acting. That's why laws are enacted, and then we act upon those laws. It's kind of like, it's the script that we have to follow. It's the script, and we just act. We act out the script. You know, there's two scripts. There's the script of man, and then there's the scripture of God. Okay, how are you going to act? Are you going to act as a man? Are you going to be a man? You're going to be a man, or are you going to act as a person? Who are you? Okay? Are you going to put yourself under this law, or are you going to follow God? What are you going to do? Are you going to act? Are you going to pretend? Are you going to act as a person, or are you going to be a man? Because that's who you truly are. It's not an assumed character. It's a character that is who you are by God. That's who a man is. It's actually who you are. It's true. This assumed character is just what men say we should be, what the government says, what state says we should be, what other people say we should be through voting and whatnot. It's their definition of good. Do you want to be man's good or God's good? So when you operate as a person, you are no longer a flesh and blood man, but taking the place as the creature created by the state. Since you are claiming to be the person, not God's man, and being the creation of the state, you are under the authority of the state. Okay? So to put it simply, by accepting the person the state creates through the birth certificate and subsequent identity, such as the driver's license, you are making a contract or a covenant with the government. Through contracts, you can give up your rights, even your God-given unalienable rights. What? You could you could give away what God gave you? You could no longer have what God gave you? That doesn't make sense. Well, let's go run an example here. Tiger Woods gets paid $100 million to exclusively wear Nike at a golf tournament. At all golf tournaments. I don't know much about this contract. I just heard of that because of the big number. So I'm kind of making some assumptions about the contract, but for this example, it's fine. Tiger Woods waived his rights to choose what he wears at golf tournaments. He could only wear Nike. Likewise, you have contractually agreed to be a person of the state, and you receive social benefits. Used your birth certificate to get driver's license and subsequent documents. You waived your rights given to you by God in exchange for the rights afforded by the government. Okay? So all contracts have at least offer, consideration, and agreement. So Tiger Woods was offered to wear only Nike clothing. The consideration was $100 million. He agreed, waiving his right to wear Adidas or non-Nike clothing. You, the flesh and blood man, were offered to be a U.S. citizen, a person. The consideration was constitutional, not God-given rights, which are really privileges, because they could be taken away. You were given constitutional rights, social benefits. We've all received social benefits such as welfare, public education, even mail at your house. So, I think everybody fits into this category somewhere. You agreed by demonstrating, you demonstrated by possessing identification with the person's name on it. Do you have a driver's license? Do you have a birth certificate? Do you have a social security card? If you did, that's prima facie evidence that you have agreed to this contract because you are holding evidence in your hand, in your wallet, in your purse. You waived your God-given rights in exchange for privileges, the constitutional rights afforded by the state. Okay? This is a contract. This is a contract that you are a part of, and you have evidence of the contract in your pocket. You are under contract with the state. You have waived your God-given rights and accepted privileges instead. God is no respecter of persons. It says that all throughout the scripture. God is no respecter of persons. And we know that a person, that the word persons in the scripture refers to the appearance, the face, the mask, right? Just this outward appearance that we show other people. Vanity, that's what this person is. It's just this outward appearance, this role that we're playing to be normal and to fit in with society and to not get fined and to be a person of the world. So I said that the state created its own world and person. So this is digging into how the world was created. So God created land and has authority over land. The state does not have authority over land. Any land, no land. They don't own land. They can't touch land. They are a creation of man. They do not have authority over something that they did not create. So the definition of land is ground, soil, or earth. Ground, soil, or earth. It's substance. It's real. It's something that you could stand on. It's something that you could pick up and put in your hand. It's real. That is land. So territory. This is what the government uses when we go through all the. If I were to go through all of God's law, he would say, land, land, land. I will give you this land. I will give you this land, the promised land, right? But then if you look through the Texas Constitution or the Arizona Revised Statutes, the state of Arizona is referred to as a territory. Texas is a territory. What is a territory? This is an interesting definition. Territory is part of a country separated from the rest, and subject. It is underneath, it is subject to a particular jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is a set of rules that are established by words. Okay? So it's a subject to a particular jurisdiction in American law. A portion of the United States, portion, important word, not within the limits of any state. This lowercase state is referring to land. It's not within the limits of any state. It's not within the land. It's not land. Territory is not land, which has not yet been admitted to the State of the Union. State of the Union, this is referring to America, the piece of land, State of the Union. Okay? America, land, not territory. But is organized with a separate legislator, separate body of law, and with executive and judicial officers appointed by the president. So this right here is referring to a description of, it's basically referring to everything above the land. This is my territory that I have claimed. It's more like a claim. Like, what if it's not real land? It's everything above the land. It's not within the limit of any state. It is not the land. It's not within the limit of the land. Okay? It gets really confusing, but once you start to read what they write, it gets really clear. Territory is not land, and I do not own territory. I own land. They have no authority over my land. But if I say, oh, this is my territory, they say, is this your territory? Is this your property? Property is another legalese word that they use to create these binding contracts with you through words. So land is created by God, and he is the authority over land. Territory is created by the state, and therefore the state has authority over it. Do you have land or do you have territory? Do you have land or do you have property? Okay. The state of Arizona, notice the all caps, is a territory and is under the jurisdiction of the state. Arizona State, there's that lowercase s, is referring to the land created by God. Okay, the state of Arizona, you cannot be on the state of Arizona. You could be in it because it's a territory. Okay, and you cannot be in the state of Arizona. I mean, unless you dig a hole and then you're in the state, but you're in the land. But you're on the land. I do not live in Arizona. I live on Arizona. I was not born in Arizona. I was born on Arizona as a man. Persons are born in Arizona. So this is the crux of the deception. They use similar words with different meanings to deceive man, created with God-given rights, to forfeit their rights to live in a false counterfeit world created by the state. So they want you to forget everything. They want you to forget about land. They want you to forget about being a man. They want you to live on territory and be a person so that they are the creator of the creation, which is who you are identifying yourself as, the creation of the state. Because if they want everything, they want to replace everything with their own creation. They don't want you to be a creation of God. They don't want you to identify as that. They want you to identify as a creation of the state. And they're slowly doing this. And we're going to see that integrating the blockchain technology is going to speed this process up. It's going to get everybody really excited, and it's going to pump everybody up and everybody's just going to give up being a man, and they're going to become just a part of this artificial world that we're creating, right? Because if everything is replaced, and if we enter into this false counterfeit world, then nothing will be created by God, and we'll have absolutely no authority. Because right now, as a man, I have authority. I have more authority than the state because I created them. And if I stand up as a man and not as a person, I'm greater than the government. I'm greater than these powers that we have created. But if I were to be in a counterfeit world in which the only thing that I could stand upon is a counterfeit, a creation of them, I have no authority. So that's kind of where this whole thing's headed. So a person drives while a man travels. A person is a bondslave while a man is free. A person has privileges while a man has rights. A person is in trust with the government while a man has the option to be in trust with God. A man is a legal fiction, while a man is real. So who are you? Are you a person or are you a man? Do you drive? Because driving is something that persons do. So if you drive, then that means you're a person, because a man can't drive. Driving is a commercial activity, and man cannot do commercial activities. There's no parity. You have to operate as a commercial entity in order to do something that's commercial, right? Okay. So are you a person or are you a man? By becoming a person and a citizen of the democratic United States, the hierarchy should look like this: God, man, government, state, corporation, persons, and citizens. So God at the top, then man, then government, then persons. That's what we think it is, right? Under God, for which it's, right? In God we trust, right? We have God written all over the place, as if we are under his authority or something, which should be the case, and that's what we think, and that's kind of part of this whole deception. Oh yeah, we're under God, we're under God's authority, but in reality we're under our own authority. We are making the law, and we vote for it, and we subject ourselves unto it. So because we've contracted with the state, making us persons, the hierarchy of authority looks like this. It's the government, the state, the corporation, right up there on the top of the pyramid. Persons, citizens, man, and then God. God at the very bottom. God at the very bottom, right? Because man has given its power to the government, and the government created the persons, right? So let's get my mouse. Man created government. Government created persons. Man identifies itself as persons. Okay? So if you identify as a person, you have no rights as a man. So it goes government, persons, man, citizen. Man creates government. Man creates government. Government creates persons. Man becomes a person, no longer identifying as a creation of God. Okay? So man really doesn't exist anymore. Man's been taken over by persons, and we like it because we are so confused. So no longer identified as a creation of God, but creation of the state. That's who we are. We're a creation of the state. And we like it because we want our benefits. And we're afraid. We're afraid to step out. So the government is the highest authority. The government controls the persons the man identifies as and is bonded with, and no longer is under the authority of God. You can't serve two masters. If you're serving them, you're not serving God. You cannot serve two masters. Who are you going to choose? Who are you going to choose? I do think this is kind of appropriate because Jesus is the cornerstone and the foundation. So it's interesting how he's at the bottom, because this is how the kingdom of God is going to be. God is going to be at the bottom, but not in authority sense, but God's going to be at the bottom because he's going to hold everything up. Right? Jesus holds everything up. Kind of cool. So because we have exchanged our identity as a flesh and blood man in exchange for the artificial identity of a person, we must also live in an artificial world. This world has not land. This world is not land. It has territory. We have no rights. We have privileges. We don't travel. We drive. We aren't under God's law. We are under the law of the state. The entire world we live in is an illusion, a creation of man to change the law and make man the source of the law. Democracy, allowing man to create the law that they subject themselves under to put man in the seat of God, right? So we create the law in democracy, the majority rule. We go to the polls and we vote and we say, this is going to be the law, and then we create the law and put everybody else under the law, including ourselves who voted for the law. So we are the lawmaker, and then we are the follower of the law, right? So when you kick God out, you have to be everything. You have to be God, you have to be under God, right? You have to be everything, because there's no God. There's no authority. So we have to create authority. We have to create a construct of authority, and we could only do that by giving power and consent, willfully giving power and consent to creating an authority figure, because there's just people here on earth. And all people are equal, right? There's nobody who's just born greater than anybody else, right? At least now, right? There's nobody who's greater, who has more authority than anybody else. So we have to create that authority. And that's to create a God. And that's what we've done here in democracy, in any constitutional government, which you will discover. So it's no wonder democracy is spreading. Wars are being fought to spread democracy. Spread democracy. Spread the ability to become God. Spreading democracy is to make man become one being. Majority rule. E pluribus unum. One out of many, one. All these people are becoming one, the God, right? We're combining as one and becoming like God, where everyone can participate in making the law. Who makes the law? Well, the Creator does. Who created us? God did. So why are we making law for ourselves unless we are claiming to be God? This false reality created by the state, democracy, legalese exploits man's desire to be God, right? Man has the desire to be God, and it's being exploited. This false reality will further manifest in the new digital age, the new digital world being created before our very eyes, utilizing blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, Elon Musk's brain mesh, digital consciousness, robotics, AI, and many other technologies that are being created and released as we speak. So this is the crypto world. This is the digital world that we're creating, a digital world. If it's digital, then it's created by man. If it's created by man, then it's not under the authority of God, because he didn't create it. I mean, ultimately, everything's under the authority of God, because he either directly or indirectly created everything. And even if you operate in this digital world, you're still under his authority, and you will still be judged for the actions that you do in this digital world, because it's all about the intent of the mind. It's the actions of the heart. But what we're doing is we're creating this system in which we're kicking God out of the seat of authority, because he did not create it, right? If we created this system, if we created this whole false world using all these technologies, right? We combine all these technologies, and we're going to get a false world, okay? We're going to get a false world that we created, all of us, everybody, like cryptocurrencies, everybody who's a part of it is creating and securing the network. Everybody who's a part of this is creating and securing the network. We are the creators of this new world, and we will be the gods of this new world, okay? We are killing God in our minds and putting ourselves into that seat of authority.